Hello, friends. It's Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle and Joy, and I've seen almost nothing.
And we are almost done with Almost Human.
So close.
Today, we are going to be talking about Almost Human Episode 12, Beholder. When a Chrome impossibly dies of a heart attack, Stahl enlists the help of Dorian and Kennex to investigate. We also get a further glimpse into Kennex's non-existent love life.
Poor Kennex.
He tries. Does he try?
He tries.
I don't know that he tries.
He gave Valerie his number X number of episodes ago.
Oh, have you come on the train of like that's actually what he did?
No, I've not. But I do think it was a flirty moment between them. There was the time they had whiskey together, I think, while watching some kind of sports ball.
I believe it was a football game. Or was it soccer? Oh, no. I might even be wrong.
Sports ball. Doesn't matter. And, he's been getting out there, as we'll discuss later in this podcast episode.
Yeah, he's trying.
He's trying. It's hard. It's rough, man. It's rough out there.
Is it? I feel like he makes it harder on himself.
He's precisely the kind of person who makes fun of other people for having dating profiles when really, maybe get a dating profile, dude. It'd be way easier.
I would normally say, what were the police unprepared for in this episode? But honestly, I feel like they were prepared for a lot. So why don't we just list off some of the interesting tech we saw here?
Yeah, I agree. They did a pretty okay job this episode. We did see a lot of fun tech, though.
Considering what they were working with, they accomplished as much as they were going to, I think.
Yes, with the full force of the Chromes behind them.
Yes.
What about that virtual immersive golf course? That was amazing.
I really enjoyed that. I was like, I would play golf. This is the kind of golf I would play. I would probably play the Wii version. So if the full immersion could also include my tiny little Wii figurine in front of me, my little me.
No, but you don't want it to be, it's supposed to be first person, not third person.
I know. Well, okay, if I was looking down and I saw my little me hands.
Yes, that's what we want. Exactly. Little me hands. I am still a little bit sad that the killer didn't just pop out of the grass or something.
It's true. He should have come out like a Pokemon, like out of nowhere and like, ha!
Exactly. That was such a lost, such a lost opportunity. Instead, the broker turns off the immersive golf course and then gets tased. Womp womp.
I know.
It's fine.
Womp womp.
There was the Vertopsy, a virtual autopsy.
I told Danielle that I had to watch this a second time because I kind of missed what the hell that word was. Like it just went whoosh right over my head. I watched the episode a second time to take notes and I was like, a Vertopsy. What? And then I realized it's a virtual autopsy.
Yes. What an odd piece of tech, though, because don't you think that if you had the capability to fully scan a person's body and pick up the minutest of details, Kennex and Dorian and Rudy are able to examine this virtual corpse and are able to notice tiny little claw marks inside the injection site where the nanobots entered? Like, that's how detailed this Vertopsy is. Don't you think that a computer program should also be able to then, scan a body and automatically just pick up on irregularities?
You would think.
That's an irregular thing, an injection site on the neck. Maybe the Vertopsy should be able to pick that up if it's scanning that.
I don't know who the coroner was on these. Drop the ball.
Real drop.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. DeCarlo's exosuit. Super fun.
Yes. Oh, how did he describe it? Did you write it down? It was like soft and squishy on the outside or something. And I was just like, yes. Also, DeCarlo is being played by Tony Cox, who I super enjoy. One of my favorite actors from Willow and a million other, like literally a million other things. He's been in a lot of stuff. But he's always enjoyable to see. And I also kind of appreciated the inclusion of that. Of the fact that, like, you can have an exosuit almost an assistance for folks walking around. But at the same time, I was just like, Kennex knows because the exosuit isn't going to talk.
Oh.
I had this thought. I don't know if this is just my headcanon.
I think, no. That totally makes sense once he sidles up to the exosuit. But he sidled up to that exosuit after seeing it from afar. So I was a bit curious about that. But maybe, he knows DiCarlo. Maybe he's seen the exosuit before.
That's true. Maybe he's seen the exosuit before. Maybe DiCarlo didn't know he'd seen the exosuit before.
Exactly. We have the villain's facial bandages, which I only wrote down because I don't really know what they're doing. They look a bit techie, maybe?
They do. They're gauze, but they look like a little bit more than gauze. But I also don't know, since the nanobots are like inside his skin rewriting his like bone structure and stuff, I don't actually know if they are protecting the nanobots, which are still working.
Oh, maybe that's fair.
Unsure.
It is a little unclear because when his eyes switch to green, they immediately switch to green. So it makes it seem like the nanobot work is almost instantaneous, but then he still has the gauze on certain areas. Not really sure. There's a mention of food cartridges, which I suppose exist in 2048. They never tell us what food cartridges are. I'm a little curious.
No. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but the last episode does have a food-related thing.
Ooh, I can't wait. Is it noodles? It's not noodles. I bet it's not.
It's not noodles. I'm sorry. No, but it is a futuristic way for food distribution. I'm going to leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. There's food cartridges. Oh, which also includes a fun little Bitcoin exchange.
Yes, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, our favorite thing.
Bitcoin exchange. Like, I also noticed that nobody talks about banks anymore. It's always the Bitcoin exchange or like the Bitcoin, whatever. It's fine. Are banks just gone? Is Chase no longer even there? Like, what? It's fine.
Well, we know that banks exist because of the bomb collar
because
episode.
You can get a home loan. You can get a loan investor hollow to talk to you about your loan investment.
A hollow investment advisor. So we know there are actual brick and mortar banks. It's silly that there are brick and mortar banks, I think. But if there's one, it can't be the only person in the world who's a little old-fashioned. I'm sure there are lots of people in 2048 who just like walking into a bank.
Who just like banking. What if people just like banking? No, yes, the Bitcoin exchange.
Super fun.
I'm trying to think if there are other... there's the Chrome rope.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Chrome club in this episode, and there is a little piece of... The cops tend to use the like virtual caution tape, which lets them through and like IDs them as they walk in. And apparently the Chromes use the same technology to keep people in and out of their club.
Yep. And it lights up green when you're a Chrome, along with a little picture of your face and a profile.
ID and
How interesting. What do you think it's scanning for? I guess it's scanning their DNA. Kind of creepy, huh?
I guess it's scanning their DNA. It's weird. Bone structure? I don't know.
Bone structure? Only people with perfect
enough?
cheekbones can pass through this door. The worst. We can't let ourselves talk about Chromes too early, Joy.
I know, I'm sorry. But I have been trying to figure out a way to talk about the police tape because I enjoy the police tape a lot. And then in this episode, I saw it as Chrome tape and I was like,
not great.
Not this thing that I think is really cool.
Listen,
anyway, yes. Next.
Anything beautiful and lovely and innovative can be taken and made terrible. That's the whole conceit of this show.
This is what you have learned. Watching 12 out of 13 episodes of the show. I mean, you're not wrong.
Speaking of the surveillance cams all over that are meant to keep people safe. Also, when they're IDing the villain, depending on the angle of his face, ID him as 2 to 3 different people, which is, it's a little bit scary, the level of surveillance that goes on in this society. We've already talked about that. I do think, again, There should have been a red flag in the system when dead faces started popping up all over the city.
Right? Like, if you can recognize a cheekbone from an angle of a camera.
Yes, and the guy had a hood and sunglasses. You know, it was just the briefest of little moments.
Yeah, and he was, at that particular moment, he was also very covered in bandages.
Mm-hmm.
And like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't even we've scanned your eyes and we're trying to send you ads. Like, this was just the surveillance footage that they looked at that day trying to figure out where the victim had actually been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was it.
That was it. A little bit of an oversight, yet again, on the police department's part, I think. Yeah. There were the robots that were used for entertainment in that street fight, which I know we've seen robots before, but we hadn't seen them in this way, so I wrote it down.
Yeah, it was definitely, that was a very tough scene. It was also hard for, like, Dorian to be there, and, like, he sort of sucked it up, you know, and, like, did a little intimidation display of his own, but... Mm-hmm. It was, you could tell it was bothering him.
Yeah, that was one of those moments that Dorian sucked up and because he had to.
Yeah.
You know, which I'm sure Dorian does hundreds of times a day.
It read that way. It was so sad. No, I know. It's one of those, I think we even talked about it in the very first episode of like, this is a moment where you have to take it, in quotation marks. Like, you have to take the uncomfortable situation because it's going to lead you to something else you need. And you have to stay silent. And this was one of those.
And he's going to choose when to make a scene because he has to be strategic about it. And it's just the politics of a workplace. Blah.
Yep. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Then, and this is the last little tech thing before we get to the very big tech thing, which was just the online chatting.
Oh, yes. The extremely esoteric online chat.
Yup. The most outdated interface I've seen ever. So ugly. Just navy, blue, and gray.
And it was just very, not even AOL. Like, AOL didn't even do that. I'm trying to, it's like the very beginning of Facebook Messenger is actually how it felt to me.
Oh. You know, I'm going to admit,
I
don't remember what that looked like. Did it look like that? I trust you.
I feel like you know what? I might just be including the blue and the gray in my brain of just like, that feels like Facebook. But I also could be wrong. It was a very, I think it was one of those, it's like one of those pieces of tech that the show thought messages were going to go in a certain direction, and they never did that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the moments in the show where you get pulled out of it and you remember that the show was made in 2013. It was A, the interface, and it was B, just yet again, their whole thing about meeting people online. Oh, you never know who you're talking to. Everyone could be lying to you. And just the idea that online chatting has to be nefarious.
Yeah. And I think you also mentioned this when we were talking about this episode of like, we saw this with the dating profile, and it's just like, well, you're going to be snarky about it and like, but like, you also have to be careful. And I'm just like,
exactly.
What 90s writer?
Right. And if they only did it one time, I guess I would have given it a pass, but they didn't. They did it at least twice. So here we go. We're calling them out.
Yes.
Which, Joy, brings us to the major technology in the episode. Do you want to take this one?
Yes. So the piece of tech in this episode, as we've seen before, is both seemingly innocuous, but instantly horrifying. The piece in particular is a syringe-based actuator, it's called, that is injected nanobots into the base of the skull. And then basically they collect a bunch of DNA and then they go back into the actuator as, you know, little vials of liquid. And then they get brought to this like Frankenstein dentist chair. What? Like, does nobody have dentists in the future anymore? Like, did somebody just sell all their dentist chairs? Because I swear, every time there's a really creepy medical thing, it's like a dentist chair with some attachments on it.
Yes.
And I don't know what happened to that. But, like, you know, you sit in this chair and there are these, it's weirdly non-invasive, but basically this machine will, I guess, virtually inject your face because there didn't seem to be any points of contact. So it's like you're between these two metal series of rods and in excruciating pain because you're conscious, or at least he was. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the official procedure you had to be conscious or not, but like then these nanobots are injected in virtually through the negative space into your skin to basically change the bone structure inside your face. And I think that one doctor called it something like no visible scarring, everything's below the surface.
Yep. So there are no more nips and tucks. He says
Yes.
It's a facelift at the atomic level. Your face gets rebuilt, quote, from the inside. Though, Joy, to your point, somehow without pricking you full of the nanobots that you just collected. It's really unclear how the machine rewrites your DNA. Doesn't really matter. It can read and reconstruct facial tissue instantaneously. So of course there's a black market for this. Of course.
That's what the show has taught us. Like, late stage capitalism will create a black market for this.
Yes, because the doctor who is helping the villain out with this procedure is a black market doctor, and his entire job is to help criminals or people who are, you know, on the lam change their faces so that they can better hide from police officers. That's his job.
Right.
That's what he does.
I did find it interesting that I don't think his other clients steal parts of people's faces. Now, one thing I did leave out is this particular procedure. The reason people don't do nanobot plastic surgery is because there's an unfortunate side effect of grabbing DNA from one person with these nanobots and putting it in someone else, because the person you grabbed it from instantly has a heart attack.
Yes, the electric signal in the nanobots triggers an arrhythmia, and they die. Well, Joy, let me say, though, and here's, I suppose, where we can get into this a bit, though we can't get into it a lot. The only reason that the police force catches wind of this case is because the villain accidentally does this to a Chrome. And all of a sudden, it's, wait a minute, Chromes don't get heart attacks. They don't die young. Something is afoul. So criminals actually could have been just killing people left and right.
Yep.
And
in fact, this villain killed, I think it was 7 people before he got to the Chrome.
He killed 9 people. Yeah.
9 people.
He killed 9 people.
Over the course of a year.
Ooh, you know what that just made me think? Remember how we were discussing pre-episode that Kennex in the car says there were 756 murders in the city every year, and both of us were like, that seems low. Given the fact that criminality is supposed to be 400% worse, in the entire city, only 756 people are murdered every year. I mean, that's awful, and of course, I don't wish for that number to be any higher.
I'm going to interrupt you there just to point out to the audience that Danielle and I do live in New York City.
Yeah.
And the 70s and 80s were twice that number pretty consistently. So we also might have a slightly skewed number of what a lot is. However, 756 still sounds low to me personally.
Also 400%.
Yeah, 400%.
I was expecting a number in the thousands.
Thousands. Easily over 2,000.
Well, maybe this is because the entire system that they've constructed is really bad at telling when a person dies naturally versus when a person is murdered.
Because those 9 other murders were not murders until this Chrome died.
Exactly. And if this black market doctor has a whole business helping people who are trying to get away from the police change their faces, and we know that the actuator kills people.
How many, do you know, they haven't said how many heart attacks a year.
They haven't said how many heart attacks a year.
Haven't said how many heart attacks.
You know, didn't they say in the other Chrome episode, I think that Valerie says, oh, the coroner said it was a cardiac arrest. And Kennick's throwaway line after that is like, oh, so that means we just don't know how they died.
Ooh.
Doesn't Kennick
say that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How many cardiac arrests a year do you think there are in the city? If the number's in the thousands, suddenly everything will make sense.
That sucks.
That does.
Oh, that's so sad.
It was
a cardiac arrest. That just means, who is teaching your coroners? Why don't you have detectives in the coroner's office being like, gee, how did this like, what? It's fine. It's fine. 2048 is bleak.
2048 is bleak.
Oh.
Okay, now what the doctor isn't telling people is that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes there's a side effect that goes along with this procedure, and the person who receives it is substantially disfigured, which is actually part of the reason why facelifts at an atomic level are not super above board. They happen every now and then, but not a lot. The science just kind of didn't work out.
It was a cool idea.
Mm-hmm. The main villain in this episode, unfortunately, was part of some of the first trials of this entire procedure, and he was one of those people who was substantially disfigured. Well, that's how they phrase it in the show, was substantially disfigured as a result of the procedure.
Yeah, they definitely show some pictures in the show.
Mm-hmm.
I do think I don't know if it's a callback to the name of the episode of course, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But the some of the pictures they show actually reminded me of that one episode, The Twilight Zone.
I don't know what you're referencing.
I promise you don't have to have seen the episode, but I'll show it to you one of these days. But it's one of my favorite episodes because it's called Beauty is in the Eye of the Beholder. Or no, it's just called Eye of the Beholder.
Okay.
The whole concept is a very, by our standards, beautiful woman wants to change the way she looks to look like the societal standards, which by our standards are ugly. Everyone else in the show who looks like this is like, yeah, she's super ugly. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's this
so it's
like,
kind of
twist.
skewering how beauty is a social construct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I mentioned it is because the pictures they show in this episode remind me of the makeup they used in that episode. It's not a direct one-to-one. Like, they don't look like pig people.
So you think that the writers were making a connection between these two things?
I think they were trying for... Look, I have issues with the writers for this episode for various reasons.
This is where I was going to say, I'm pretty sure they picked Beholder because Eye of the Beholder. And the entire reveal for this entire episode. Shall we do it now? Do we get into the gift of the Magi of it all?
Yes. I told Danielle, I wrote this down. So this fatal gift of the Magi. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in a very small nutshell, because we don't want to spend a lot of time on it, the villain of this episode is essentially a serial killer trying to put the best parts of people he's found because he has this ideal face in mind. And he has an avatar with this face, which he uses on these chat forums to talk to a woman who he is in love with, who literally lives eyeshot of his apartment.
A stone's throw away.
He has told her that he lives in Arizona and he cannot come and see, like, you know, it's too long distance, blah, blah, blah. He has, like, I assume unrequited for, I'm going to assume years, but he's only been talking to her for a couple of months. And this is what accelerates him to get more of these procedures done so he can go and see her in person. Mm-hmm. Now, when he gets there, he's already in pursuit by the police. He, I assume, makes one last effort to be like, I'm just going to go see her one last time before the police come and get me, because he knows what he's done. Mm-hmm. And he had, by the way, he has known this entire time. Like, he threatens the doctor. He blackmails the doctor to do this for him. He is mean to him. He doesn't seem to feel any kind of remorse at all this entire time. He
kills 9 people.
At least.
Mm-hmm.
At least? I don't even remember. He kills 2 people in the course of the episode.
Yeah.
Within, like, 2 days when he had been doing once a month. he meets this woman in person in the room, and she's blind. And basically tells him, I don't care what you look like. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you. I hope this doesn't change anything. You know, I didn't know how you'd react. I just wanted you to know that I love you for who you are, and I don't care what you look like at all. And I can never see what you're going to look like, you know. And he puts together context clues from the apartment. There are sensors all over, which this was actually the only upside for me. It was like, oh, look, the 400% can actually help the visually impaired a little bit more. Great. But like the reveal was so upsetting to me because I didn't feel like the character had earned this level of sympathy.
Well, it was upsetting. I agree with you. It was upsetting because it was also upsetting because 9 people died for nothing. And then the instant he realizes the instant he realizes that she is blind and he could have just kept his original face all along, he starts to cry and it becomes a moment. And then the final words that they give the character before he dies, he has this moment with Kennex. He asks John if he's ever been loved. You're right. And John says, I have. The guy goes, then you wouldn't understand. We're supposed to be loved. So it paints him as this unfortunately sympathetic serial killer who went through this entire process because, and Valerie calls it dysmorphia, because he's always been dissatisfied with his face. He's always been dissatisfied with the way he looks. He thinks that the reason that he hasn't ever been loved is because of his face. And, I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable that I thought it was cool that we were getting a male representation of dysmorphia on screen because I don't think that we get that very often. But then they took that representation and they made him a serial killer. And then they tried to make me feel bad for him. And it was a lot.
Writers have a tendency to do this a lot where they take something, and Danielle and I are on the same page on this. The vast majority of people with dysmorphia are not homicidal maniacs. Like, the fact that I have to say that talking about media is frickin' ridiculous.
It's so aggravating.
I can't explain to people how these two things live in two separate places of your brain. Like, because if you make this a reason that you kill people, it's separate. It's separate. One has nothing to do with the other. You are looking for excuses for your own urge to take a life from someone else. And it's dumb and I hate it. I'm laughing so I don't cry. No, it's just...
No, I know.
I keep
laughing. I keep laughing too because I'm annoyed at it. And I guess I laugh when I'm frustrated. As a super fun layer on top of all of this, he has this image in his mind of the perfect face, and he chooses 9 attractive white people to construct this perfectly attractive, ideal face. And that made me really mad. So...
Yeah, Danielle was the one who caught that, or rather caught that out loud first. And I was like, oh, thank God I wasn't the first person to say that. Because I could feel myself being like, wow, that list is mighty white. Mighty, mighty white. The other problem for me is the show is full of such attractive people.
Yeah.
That when Maldonado goes like, I see a pattern. These are all very pretty people. And I just kind of sat there and went, your show is full of how do you, what?
Your entire show is attractive people.
Your entire show is attractive people. Everyone's pretty. It was a weird moment where I was like, you hire attractive extras, you hire attractive speaking role. I forget what the term is called, but there's like a term for an extra who has like 3 lines. You hire attractive side characters who are only there for one episode. Like, literally everybody in the show is very attractive. And you're calling out these 9 people, these 9 very white people for what? The angle of their jaw?
Their ideal facial features.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And this was something I mentioned to you, too, where I was just like, well, this feels very much like women are attracted to the strong jaw and the forward and the large brow. And I was just like,
I mean, the very last victim that they actually happened to save, he was supposed to be victim number 10, was selected because of his cheekbone structure.
Specifically, just that.
Cool.
Oh, come on, it's still murder. Like,
murder. Well, speaking of perfect cheekbone structure, shall we discuss the chromes?
Yes, so in this episode, we got to see this a little bit in episode 10, where we saw chromes, and chromes make another appearance.
Woohoo!
This time, they're adults. With jobs and lives.
With jobs and lives. And so, we got to learn a little bit more about Chrome Society.
I did pick up that Valerie, I believe Maldonado, like, approaches Valerie at one point and says something like, the chromes are the ones who told you about this case, right? And she said, yeah, they told me about it because they're hoping it's murder. Because a chrome is not supposed to have a heart attack.
Yep.
You're supposed to be healthy as a horse, basically forever. Long life, beauty, perfection. And that's what you buy.
As she phrases it, when a chrome is designed, every box is checked. Health, beauty, intelligence, no congenital defects, quote, perfect genes.
Yeah.
This episode also clocks in for the second time a character saying that chromes take care of their own and that it's very expensive to have a chrome child. So, welcome, listeners, to our episode issue, which is, in fact, classism.
Classism. Boom, boom, boom. Like, I imagine an infographic with, like, a big rainbow, and it just says classism, like on like on the Magic School Bus. No, yeah, but yes, we saw this in episode 10, and I kept thinking about the mom while I was watching this episode, where the mom was like, the chromes take care of their own. The chromes hushed my investigation into my daughter's death. They do. As you even said in that episode, we only see glimpses of this class divide. This actually, I think this is the end result of trying to keep that class divide from spilling over into full-on class warfare, where the chromes stick to themselves because they're already insular. It's like the 1%, like they all already, do their own thing and are in their own parties and
they have their
jets.
own clubs. Their kids all hang out together. They're in their own schools.
Yeah.
And yet have infiltrated the highest echelons of society, which is why they look down on Valerie for choosing to become and then stay a police officer. These are the type of people who think, well, one of them, because he's super smart, is able to become an attorney at age 18, but they never cap out an attorney. Oh no, these are the kind of people who will then go on to become a district attorney, the attorney general, the president, some sort of politician, or maybe they'll become a world-class...
Insert politician
exactly,
here.
Maybe they become a world-class doctor. This one, the first victim we see, who is a bonds trader, I think, was originally an Olympic swimmer.
Oh, yes, at the Olympics in Detroit.
The Olympics in Detroit.
Which I thought was pretty great. Shout out to Detroit.
Yeah. I loved that. But they're pervasive and yet insular. So
pervasive is a good word for it.
Yes, and they control so much. They have ears everywhere, as Valerie says. And even though they have all of this influence and this clout, they only use it to benefit themselves. They don't really care about things like bettering general society. They don't care that the police force is corrupt. In fact, they take advantage of that corruption, as Joy said. They don't even use the police. They have their own private security, which is why they don't care that it's corrupt. In fact, they prefer it.
Yeah. Like, I think I got to that part where it was like long life, perfect health. And I was just like, you should replace every single android on the police force with a Chrome.
Yeah, but they would never. They would never.
I know.
Because they're not foot soldiers, they're generals.
Just makes me so mad.
It makes me really mad. The way that they view society and the way that they view who's higher in the hierarchy. And who's lower and who they have to step on to get there. It's all awful, which is why Valerie hates them so much and why Valerie has separated herself from that part of society.
Right. When she does finally go and talk to... She gets into the Chrome Club, which is also very funny because she's like, yeah, unfortunately, I am a member. And then she gets to talk to a guy and, you know, they hit it off, I guess. I don't know. Look, I didn't see what was so special outside of his perfect jawline. He was very pretty. And that was kind of it for me.
But
I was like,
everyone in the club is pretty.
You're so milquetoast, though.
Well, he had a brother who's a sculptor. Very cool. So I guess...
See, I got interested in that. I was like, introduce me to your brother who works with chainsaws and wood.
Yes.
I would like to talk to him, please, and thank you. No, I think it was good for her to have sort of a human interaction with these people because she even says in the episode where she was like, I stopped thinking about them as human. Mm-hmm. But they're human. They're human too. You know, they have problems just like everybody else. But
yeah, of course
fine.
They're human. They're just terrible humans.
They're just bad humans. And then she ends up going on a date with one.
One of the good ones, as they say.
Yes, one of the good ones. Even though he's milquetoast, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I know we were talking about, we'll hop off this subject in just a second, but like, I know we were talking about how mad Danielle and I will both be that this milquetoast Chrome gets to hear the story of Valerie Stahl's life. Meanwhile, the audience will never know.
Yes. Oh, that makes me mad.
We're second to last episode, and you know we're not going to get her.
Of course not. And I just want to know. I want to know, were her parents Chromes? Were they naturals? Does she come from this long generation of Chromes?
Yeah, how far back does the Chrome go?
Exactly. Have there even been generations? I just want to know. I want to know it all. And I'm never going to. I'm never going to.
I'm sorry. This is the cross we bear as fans of this show. But speaking of going out on dates
that we bear. Well,
just kidding. Going out on dates. Crosses that we bear. Well, I mean, Synth Pride almost had a date, but apparently it was weird that one time that Dorian went out with him watching him drink beer. And he was like, it got a little weird.
That was so funny. It was
very cute.
I don't know if this was an end result of the date, but Dorian is also in a relationship with Kenix's smart bed.
According to Kenix, he is in a relationship with the smart bed. And then it was like, what else did my smart bed tell you? And it's like, I don't know. I scrubbed it from my memory. Apparently, I didn't want to remember it. And Kenix is just like, good.
I loved the Synth Pride moments in this episode. I feel like we got back that banter where they tease each other and they're mean to each other, but no one cares because they're both volleying back and forth. Yep.
I do think this is a product of this being episode 12, and this was meant to be episode 12. And so they are like solidly on their game. Like, even though they're saying some salty stuff back and forth, like, I swear there was a heated moment almost where Dorian was saying, oh, that's right. He was trying to talk to Kenix about, like, you know, lowering the technological standards. And it was just like, oh, sure, yeah, we could get you a wooden stump for your leg. Or maybe something useful like a shovel. And then Kenix's answer was, wish I had a shovel right now.
Right? And the whole reason Dorian calls out Kenix in that moment for being a hypocrite is that Kenix is just complaining about technology driving a wedge between people. You know, he's like, you know, well, he is understandably upset about the chromes and understandably upset that the only reason we clock this death as a murder is because the chromes got involved. But then there was also that disastrous date the previous evening, which went poorly because his date kept on taking hollow calls during the date. And so finally he just says, you know what, Dorian? Because Dorian isn't taking any of this. He says, you know what, Dorian? You can't handle the fact that technology is part of the problem. Cuts a little close to the titanium, you know, so he's digging it, Dorian.
And meanwhile, Dorian's fine.
Dorian's fine.
Take it.
He's like, listen, man, you have an artificial leg.
You are able to walk on two legs because one of them is technology.
Right. You can't rag on technology every single time we talk and walk around with that leg.
Oh, man. There were so many, actually, to call back that conversation about the date, Dorian's first thing is like, I don't know, man. Maybe you're just boring.
Maybe that's why she was taking the hollow calls.
Maybe that's why you were hollow-blocked.
I was saying hollow-blocked.
Hollow-blocked.
Perhaps you're
Maybe
boring.
You're boring. I mean, there's so many other things that Dorian says, too, of like, you know, it is, to be flawed is to be human. Have I told you how human you are lately?
And after all of this back and forth, the last moment we get between the two of them in the episode, I love, first of all, because we get to see Dorian ask Kennex if he's okay. And usually it's the other way around. So I love that.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's when we get that moment where Dorian says, do you think that with all the people in this city and the world that there's someone out there for everyone? And Kennex are, you know, hard on the outside, squishy on the inside, says, I do.
I know.
And Dorian's just that's so old-fashioned.
I do think it's an interesting, something the show does, which I'm a little sad we'll never get to see where this goes. But a lot of the villains are able to show Kennex parts of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular episode, this villain was able to, you know, was sort of able to be like, are you, you know, like, have you been loved?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Kennex has been loved and been betrayed is a big part of his hesitancy, shall we say.
To form new relationships.
Yes, to forming relationships, 100%. I also think Kennex probably didn't have as hard a life as he likes to think, like that we think he had.
I mean, he had a pretty bad thing happen to him.
Yes.
And had this wonderful support system that picked him up off the ground right after it happened and has overlooked his laundry list of issues that should have kept him out of the police force and gave him a second chance, you know? So he's also benefited quite a bit from the structure of his life.
Benefited quite a bit. It's not that I think he has privilege. It's more like I think he just has people around him who care enough to see past his grumpy old man exterior. Because I do think he's one of those people. Like, I've known people who are like in their 20s and they're grumpy old men. You know, I feel like that's Kennex.
Do you think at the end of the episode, I feel like at the end of the episode, maybe he was reflecting and thinking about how he does have love in his life? Or do you think he was reflecting and thinking he doesn't have love in his life?
It's hard to know. I think...
Because I think he does. He has Maldonado. He has Dorian.
Who lost a bet. Maldonado lost a bet.
And that's why she's kept Kennex around.
That's why she's kept Kennex around. No, I think just like in the last episode... actually, the last episode where we talked about chromes, where, like, I think the villain taught him something where it's like revenge is not going to quell whatever it is inside of you. I think this villain taught him that you're not, like, sometimes you have to ask for love, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can't just make assumptions about other people and you have to put yourself out there, which he, tries. And we get that, early season 1, I'm gonna ask out my crush. I'm gonna do it. And then of course the crush's date shows up.
Poor Kennex.
I know, poor Kennex. He tried.
We were so close.
So close. That's right.
There definitely would have been a little bit of a romance triangle in season 2, had season 2 come around.
She leaves and the camera still pans to her because she looks at him longingly as she leaves. Like, she's into him. It's so obvious. And he, like, finally said something. There was a series of television shows and movies around this time that I was watching where a lot of women would say things like, you're too late.
Oh.
But half the time it was a lot of women who were, like, trying to put themselves out there and trying to be available and, like, doing the flirtatious thing. And then it's like the dude would not do anything.
Yeah.
And then the women would have to be, like, in a relationship with someone else. And then it's like, it's the Onegin problem where it's like, you only want me because now I'm unavailable. I was so available before.
But it was 2013, so I couldn't ask you out, I guess.
I know. Spoilers, I've been asking out everybody since I was old enough to have feelings for people. I was like, do you want to see a movie? It could be a date. Anyway, I think we just about covered everything. Is it time for one more thing?
Yes, Joy, if you could discuss one more thing about this episode, what would you discuss?
My one more thing about this episode is poor Rudy. We see, and I'll try to make this as brief as possible because it's very cute and it just happens for like a split second. It made me feel for Rudy, even though I know what the show was trying to do, and I'll get to that in a sec. But, like, they're on the trail of the serial killer who is killing beautiful people, and that's, like, the headline in the news, which, by the way, woof.
Yeah.
It's its own can of worms.
Killer of the young and beautiful.
I hate it.
Yep.
So Rudy is, like, in a bad mood doing these, like, vertopsies. Such a weird word. And, like, working on, like, the body they have and, like, trying to see, where the connections are. And he's grumpy. Mm-hmm. And Kennex and Dorian show up, and he almost, like, doesn't even look at them. Mm-hmm. He's so put off. And finally, Kennex has to be like, what's eating you? And he's like, there's a killer out there killing young and beautiful people, and you didn't think to warn me?
I had to hear from the news.
I had to hear this from the news. And
then he holds his face up to the face of the vertopsy next to him and literally says, what's the difference between me and all 7 of these victims?
And I think he says something like, I'm alive.
I'm alive. Or they're all dead.
I'm alive.
One. It's either one or the other.
Yeah. And I know what they're trying to do, because in 2013, they were trying to do this thing where it's like, oh, look, the ugly person thinks they're attractive.
Let's all laugh at them. Oh,
Let's all laugh.
Oh, look, what is the word I'm looking for? The person who
non-traditional.
Yes. The non-traditionally attractive person is putting himself out there, going out to clubs, having a great time with the people that he is attracted to.
Talking to women. This whole series, like, I don't even think I had the opinion they wanted me to have when I was watching the episode, just because I think he's adorable. And I'm just like, I wouldn't.
Conventionally attractive was the word I was looking for.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, it's fine.
He's not conventionally attractive.
Yes, he's not conventionally attractive. And I just wouldn't be upset if we just stopped making people feel bad for feeling on themselves. Like,
yeah.
I wouldn't be mad if somebody was, like, actually confident in themselves and everybody took them frickin' seriously.
Right. And if everyone took them seriously and everyone embraced them and how perfect they thought they were and are, instead of making fun of them for it, as if it's ridiculous that he could be attractive or ridiculous that he could go out and flirt with women and buy them drinks.
Like, yeah, it made me, I felt gross.
Yeah, not great.
No. But that was sort of my one more thing, because poor Rudy.
Yeah, I agree. We've seen it throughout the series, and I'm glad we called it out in this episode.
Yeah. So what's your one more thing, Danielle?
My one more thing was just a moment, and I think it was one of my favorite parts of the investigation, which is when Kennex and Dorian and some other police officers, maybe, I can't remember, are inside of the villain's apartment, and they're trying to find this woman that he's been chatting with for months. And as Dorian is hacking into the computer and going through the months-old messages and trying to gather clues from that, Kennex looks around the room, because of course he does. He's Kennex. And then he notices these indentations in the rug. He bends down and feels them, and they are footprints, because the villain has stood in that exact spot and stared at that woman for years. And now his footprints are just in the floor, and that's how Kennex figures out the woman in the apartment that we can see from the window is the woman the man is going to.
Yeah, I think Kennex even says, she a brunette.
Right? And you know what? If you had old school police work on your bingo card, you get to stamp it. Because
yes,
here it was. That was the moment in this episode, and I loved it.
Here it is. We did it.
Yay. That brings us our second to last episode. Oh my gosh. I'm not ready to say goodbye.
I know. All I can tell you is we're just going to have so much fun in our episode 14, tying together the loose ends that this show gives us.
I can't wait. Don't tell me anything about the next episode. I don't want to know how little resolution I'm going to get.
You got it.
Okay. Well, between now and our next episode, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, if you could name a pair of nanobots, what would you name them? Or you can email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the old-fashioned people in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.
Can you hear my cat outside this door?
Yes.
She is digging to get into the closet, and Can you hear her bells?
I think I heard her bells before. I can't hear them now. Why don't you crack
She's
the door open?
She's literally like, it's like a horror movie, because I can hear the door handle rattling, and I can hear digging at the bottom of the door. I'm sorry.
Is that
sorry,
tough?
Paul. I'm just gonna close the bedroom door so that she can't even get to the closet door.
I mean, you can let her in.
No, because then she's just gonna be loud.
Ah, fair.
Okay. We don't have to redo any of that, though, right? Were the bells really obtrusive?
Look, people understand that podcasts are recorded in like a live setting. Like I said, my phone alert came on in one of the previous episodes, so.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Paul. Maybe that's a blooper we put at the very end of the episode for the dedicated people who decided to listen all the way through. Maybe.
Can you hear my
I don't
cat?
know.
It's a horror movie in here.
Can you hear my cat? It's like a horror movie. I think that's very funny, personally.